I was born.
What do they call you?
Are you ready?
What did they call you when you were born? What's your name?
John Daniel. Okay, my mom was between marriages when I was born, so my father wasn't in the picture. In fact, I've never met my real father. And I was raised by my grandmother until I was between 6 and 7 years old. I don't remember a lot before that time. I guess I had some kind of head injury when I was about 6. I fell on the concrete and hit my head and had a really bad concussion, so I've got no real young childhood memories. But I do remember pretty much being snatched away from Grandma when I was about 7 and heading to Detroit, where I grew up with my stepdad and my sister and 2 step siblings, a brother and a stepbrother and a stepsister. So it was a pretty full house, and it was a very strict house. There was more rules than there was love. We were given what we needed. We had food and shelter, and other than that, we pretty much had to stay out of the picture and be quiet. So obviously, you're going to rebel from that. So we spent most of our time just running the streets until it got dark, and then we'd come home, you know. And in early teen years, my stepbrother and his older brother introduced me to drugs, and we got into like acid and crystal tea, smoking pot, and all the usual stuff of the mid-70s. I was actually dealing acid in junior high school, and it was about probably 12 or 13 years old I started picking up a guitar, and thankfully I did, because that's what led me away from the drugs. I mean, you can't play guitar when you're out of your mind, so I was kind of delivered from drugs through music. But then just the situation at home, I was just, of course, being a rebellious kid, I didn't want to follow the rules, so I was in a band by the time I was 15 years old, and we thought we were the greatest thing since, you know, the Grateful Dead. And we ended up actually running away from home. I was 15, the guitar player was 16, and the drummer was also 15, just before my 16th birthday. So our lead guitar player his family had a camper way up northern Michigan, so we'll go up there, we'll make it rich, you know, we'll be famous, we'll live on our own. So we went up there to this town that had a population of about 32 inside the city limits, little bitty town. And we were playing in the only bar in town on Friday night, and we get paid $100. So we had to split $100 a week between 3 people. So we were doing a lot of raiding gardens and everything else just to try to survive, and that lasted probably until it got real cold. Then, you know, the 2 guys, you know, put their tail between their legs and went home. I had met a girl while I was there, so I stayed, of course, with her, and that didn't work out. I mean, it worked out for about a year, maybe a little over a year, and probably right after I was 18, I headed back down towards Detroit, where I grew up, and I didn't want to go home back to my parents, you know, admit that I didn't make it. So I hung around with friends, crashed where I could, spent a lot of time pretty much homeless for about a year, and finally I just was beat up by life, so I headed back home and asked if I could come back and get back on my feet, and they let me in. Actually, the prodigal son returned, and I got a job at a big boy restaurant cooking, and I just took to it right away. They loved me there, so they're like, we're going to train you to be a manager. So pretty quick, within like 6 months, I was managing a restaurant. And it was right around Christmas time. My parents, Christmas morning, I woke up and I come out and got a cup of coffee and we're sitting there, and Dad says, "Go get his present." He was a real grumbly guy. He said, "Go get his present." So she come walking out of the room with this big old suitcase. And she said, "This is for you. Do you need help packing it?" So in other words, we liked it better when you were gone. So here's a suitcase. Let's go. So I had enough. I got an apartment, and I was by myself for a little while. Then we hired this one waitress where I was working, and we got together. We hooked up and shacked up pretty much, and had a son who is in his late 30s now, and I'm very proud of him. He did really good. In fact, one time I said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And he was a teenager. He goes, "The exact opposite of everything you did, Dad." And I said, "That's a good choice." Because I was with his mom for about 3 years old. He was about 3 when we broke up. And I met another woman, and we got married fairly quickly. That marriage lasted 7.5 years. And she was a severe alcoholic. And I spent the majority of that marriage trying to save her. Well, of course, drinking like a fish myself. Started out as like, well, I'll just drink this so she don't drink it. When she'd pass out, I'd finish everything we had. And pretty soon we were just both battling drunks and barely surviving, struggling just to, get by every day. And 7.5 years into the marriage, she got so bad. I mean, she drank herself into the hospital so many times, but she got so bad, she decided to go back to Georgia with her family and try to straighten her life up. So she just up and left. She had 5 kids, 3 of them that lived with us, and she just packed up the kids and left, and that was the last time I ever seen them. And that was my first real marriage failure, I guess. I mean, I was devastated. Even though it was a terrible marriage, I mean, I was still devastated. And so after that, I got into a rebound marriage with a woman that was 10 years younger than me. I was 35 and she was 25 when we got married, I believe. And it went pretty good for about a year, and then she started just like drinking really heavy, running the bars, and I'd go out of town to work, and another guy'd come in the house while I was gone, and so I tried to fix it, being the man I am, but I couldn't fix that, so I ended up divorcing her, and I was pretty much done. I got this little studio apartment. It was like a shoebox. It had one room with a bedroom and a bathroom. That was it. And I decided I was just better off alone. So I stayed that way for a while, and I started going to this diner in Shelby, and that's where I first seen my current wife, the love of my life. And I went in there a few times, and after a few times going in and watching her and studying her, I asked her out, and she said no. Yeah, she shot me right down. And so I still went in. We still talked and everything. And it was, about a year later? 6 months later? I get a phone call from her. She says, "I just drove by you and you didn't even wave." I'm like, so? So we made a date, and we actually started dating because I guess the guy she was dating earlier just wasn't good enough. So anyway, we started dating, and it was really, I mean, I wasn't ready, but I wanted her basically, but I took it really slower than most guys these days would. I mean, we didn't even probably kiss for like, 3 weeks or something. And when we finally did it, I knew it was her, and within 6 months, we were married, and we've been together going on 22 years now. And it's just amazing is with such a rough life and a rough start that God will turn everything around. And what really got turned around, Danny, don't get a big head. What really turned us around is when we left the church we were going to, we weren't getting filled. But when we came here and we really got what true worship was about, our life did a flip-flop. I mean, we don't worry about anything now. We're happier than we ever been. The finances they just roll in. I don't know from where, but we're blessed in every way. And not just is God giving me a good woman, a big part of my testimony. This church right here and you people that I love are a huge part of this testimony. And I thank you and I love you all.